Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. This is episode number 299 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. So excited for this. For those of you who heard last week, just another reminder that next week, in order to celebrate our 300th episode, as we come up on our 4-year anniversary of having the podcast here, so many changes, transitions, amazing conversations. Oh my goodness, I feel like I am just growing up. I feel like we're all growing up on this podcast. I get notes from you all the time about all the different episodes. So many of you have been listening literally for 2, 3, 4 years, which is so amazing. And of course, those of you who are new to the show, always appreciate newcomers as well. But we're celebrating next week, all week long. You'll be able to sign up for a Wild Soul Movement weekend workshop and save $99. You can join for $300 rather than $399 to honor our 300th episode. So head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/workshops and check out when the remaining dates are for the year. We've got 2 in Australia, 1 in the UK, New York, Massachusetts, San Francisco, Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago. We've got plenty to choose from, no matter where you are on the planet. I'd love to meet you in real life. These are always so fun. We keep them small and intimate. There's never more than 15 people in the workshops for now. So again, we'll be celebrating all week next week with that last little sale of the year, and that will be the last time in 2019 that I put workshops on sale. So if you've been kicking the tires and thinking about it and you want to save some money, definitely sign up next week. As for today's episode, this is a business conversation. I know that not everyone who listens to the podcast is an entrepreneur. We do have a good chunk of entrepreneurs, though. I do not like to focus so many of our conversations on entrepreneurs, but every once in a while, I do enjoy having one. You know, and also some people are just genuinely curious about how business or branding or startups work. So this is a great conversation to listen in on, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. I met our guest, Arielle Loren, in 2015 when she attended my Wild Soul Movement retreat in Costa Rica. And ever since, I've really enjoyed watching her business and trajectory evolve. And we dove into all the parts of that in her business and in her work. In this conversation, we talked about integrating larger social issues into business, which is what she's been doing by focusing on the disparity between how funding gets allocated to the rest of the entrepreneurial field versus what's available to specifically early stage women of color founders. She explained the difference between different types of funding for us, which was, I learned some stuff in this conversation. She talked about what bootstrap mentality means and how to leverage and build credit and gain access to certain circles. We explored where people waste their money in the early stages of running a business. And let me tell you, raise his hand, #guilty. She shared the psychology and process to sales with us, working remotely, what that's like, as well as the role that self-care, focus, and perspective play in running a sustainable business. So many people start businesses and burn out within their first couple of years, and they don't make it. I also loved hearing about her various ventures over the years, living abroad, and how she landed in Miami as her current home base. So this is a really rich and really layered conversation. I hope you enjoy this. Share it up. The show notes will be at untameyourself.com/299. Again, that's untameyourself.com/299. And now for today's show. Arielle, I'm so excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yo, we've been acquainted for a while. You came to my retreat in really the only extended retreat I've run other than teacher training back in 2015. That's where I first got to know you.
Yeah, honestly, it's been quite a bit of time. But I honestly look back at that point in my life, and I'm just so glad that we met. And Costa Rica was fabulous, man. I remember.
It was so juicy. So I'm so excited to get to dive into what you're doing now because, I get this a lot from people who say it's so fun to watch your evolution, and that is how I feel about you. So I'm excited. I don't always do origin stories with people, but I really want to dig into yours. But to start, we have two questions we like to start people with. The first one, and answer this however you want because it's a little personal. How's your body today? What's going on with your body?
Oh, wow. I feel actually really good. I think I'm kind of in I can't say that it's I feel my 100% best. I've been working quite a bit. And so, that just kind of comes with a bit of wear and tear. But, I definitely feel comfortable. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and functioning the way I'm supposed to function.
Yay. And then what's a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
Well, I think kind of more recently, as I started to kind of make this really big shift in my career, I realized that my work and the reason that I was really put here on earth was to connect to a lot of larger social issues and to kind of help to correct, just a lot of those things that I'm sure we'll talk about in this interview that are occurring. And so, my biggest truth right now is just realizing that there are some serious discrepancies between kind of early stage, women of color, founders and the funding that they're receiving in their businesses compared to kind of the rest of kind of the general entrepreneur, demographics. And so a lot of my work right now is focused on how can I get, these women the funding that they deserve. And of course, make sure that they're well trained to be able to handle it as well.
I love that because, I know so many people who are entrepreneurs and across various industries. And that's the thing. I think there is a real misconception that if we just had more money, ... But you hear these stories about people getting any amount of money from 5 figures to 8 figures and then just blowing it because they didn't have the training or they didn't know how to use it or what to do with it. And I saw actually at the time of recording this, it's late January. I think it's going up late February, the interview. But you had just posted something the other day about someone who received millions and blew right through it. Meanwhile, some of the women that you work with have trouble getting a 5-figure investment. So I'm curious in general, start us out. This is something I don't know that we've ever talked about on the show before. When you say funding, how do you actually define that? Because I think there's a whole bunch of different ways. So I want to know broad stroke definition, and then tell us more specifically if there's a type or a couple of types that you work with people to get. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, I created an incubator that teaches kind of multiple different types of funding, and so we teach everything from, how to get business loans, business lines of credit, business credit cards, business grants, venture capital, crowdfunding, kind of like all. Pretty much anything you could probably think of, we do cover kind of at least on a foundational level, right? And not only do we teach it, but then we connect, our members to different partners, they can actually give them those resources. And then once they have those resources, we also teach them like, okay, this is what you actually do with it. Like, this is where you invested in your business so you see the most growth. This is how you acquire customers. This is how you know what your costs are. All of those things that I personally just feel like need to be taught, way more in depth in general when it comes to kind of entrepreneurial circles. And so when it comes to funding, the discrepancies that I've seen, and one of the reasons that I created an incubator that focuses on funding for women entrepreneurs, is because I'm noticing that we kind of tend to be at the back of the pack when it comes to receiving funding, and specifically if we're going to talk about the racial differences even within our gender as women, it's like, okay, well, less than 1% of Black women founders actually have received venture capital funding. Also only 34 Black women founders have ever received over $1 million, in venture funding as well. 34. So it's one of those things that it's like, okay, when we look at the stats, when we look at the research reports that are prepared by the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Census Bureau, American Express, et cetera, what we're seeing is that women of color tend to be really at the back of the pack when it comes to, receiving funding. And I'm not just talking about venture capital funding. I'm talking about even business loans, lines of credit, just all of like those smaller, like you said, kind of 5-figure, amounts of money that really like could make a significant difference, in that woman being able to scale to even just like $100,000 in sales per year. So, I've just gotten really passionate about this because I think a lot of the language around, us, even just as women, like as founders, it's this whole like bootstrap mentality. And then in the meantime, we have, all these kind of other entrepreneurs, and specifically, white men, who are coming in and receiving a lot more money than we are, for frankly, some mediocre ideas. And so it's just like, I sit here sometimes and I'm just like really perplexed. And, like you said, at the time of this recording, everyone's coming off of the whole Fire, documentary, for the Fire Festival that went completely to just ridiculous, but it was like, that young man raised $24 million, and he didn't raise that all at once. He raised some of it. And then even as he was showing that he wasn't equipped to be able to handle that, and that, also that, he's a con artist, et cetera, he still kept getting money. And so it just goes to show some of the, kind of biases and privileges that, some of us actually have when it comes to receiving access to capital, versus, others. So yeah, so that's what I'm really passionate about and what I'm working on right now.
And you didn't say this necessarily, but you touched on something, and I want to pull on this thread because a lot of the mentors for decades that people look to for their bootstrapping advice are white men. And if you are not a white man, a lot of that advice is truly not going to apply to you deeply and thoroughly. Some of it might, but some of it actually is straight up gaslighting. like if you just work harder, or like I was on someone's Instagram account the other day who falls into this category, and one of his posts that really grinded my gears said, the only people that are going to criticize you are people doing less than you. And I'm like, no, like that kind of like do more, like the Gary V style. I was dying. There was a Medium post last year in 2018. The title of it was Gary V is trying to kill you. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear you also speak more specifically towards what are some of the unique challenges? Like what makes some of this like bootstrapping mentality / advice not necessarily applicable or accurate to the population that you're serving?
Yeah, so we have to, I think, actually look at some of the research, right? And
Yeah.
so Black women are the fastest growing, demographics when it comes to, starting businesses, right? So the number of Black women-owned businesses grew 164% between 2007 and 2018, right? And that's compared to only a 58% growth rate across all women-owned businesses. Okay, so you're definitely seeing, there's greater interest. We're the fastest growing population, et cetera. But when it comes to actual earnings, right? So when it comes to how much money we're actually making on average, women of color, which includes, Black women, Latino women, Asian women, et cetera, we're making $84,000 on average, and that went down to about 66,000, in 2018. Right, compared to non-minority businesses actually having an upswing, so having $181,000 on average, going up to $212,000, right? And so we're starting businesses at a faster rate, but our revenue is not going up, which is a big problem. And part of those issues is oftentimes, not having the knowledge in terms of really knowing how to leverage credit and build credit, both on a personal level and also on a business level. It's also just, not having access to, certain circles, especially if you're looking more so in like the venture capital, angel investor like world, a lot of those relationships and even the reason why, men like a Billy McFarland, et cetera, are able to raise that level of money, even if they don't have the skills, is just because they're in those types of circles. And often those circles in terms of access are, dependent on, race. They're dependent on, gender. They're dependent on education. They're dependent on a lot of different things that oftentimes women of color just don't have access to. So it's education. It's access. It's credit. It's a bunch of different factors that play into not actually being able to receive the capital to be able to invest in the business to be able to scale. And I just want to also address something that you said, because you said there are a lot of kind of entrepreneurial gurus, and even you were talking about kind of these like, white male, entrepreneurs who were talking about like bootstrapping and like all of this stuff. But I don't think that people are being 100% honest about like what it actually takes to build a six-figure business. And
Totally.
It's very rare that I meet someone that didn't receive, any sort of capital infusion, whether it came from a family member, whether it came from personal credit cards, whether it came from, all of these different things. Like maybe you didn't get $1 million VC, check, but, you had some sort of capital that's infused. But what I'm seeing is that particularly amongst Black women and women of color, I'm not even seeing those basic, like business lines of credit, business loans, et cetera, even just $10,000 being afforded, to us. Yeah. And so I'm like, that's a problem. There are a lot of people right now in the VC world who are having conversations and trying to raise more awareness and increase that kind of 34, only 34 Black women received over $1 million in funding. Okay, great. I'm glad they're doing that work, and that's fantastic. But I'm like, can I just help some women get $10,000 to put into their business and teach them how to flip that into $100,000? Like, that's what's grinding my gears, because I'm like, $10,000 is not a lot of money. Why are we having, this conversation? If these women if they're well prepared, if they're trained, if their business models are tight, and obviously that, requires mentorship, which we provide. But it's like, if they've done all this and it's been tested and the numbers are showing, I want to see them get, those kind of smaller, like micro loans that way they can scale. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love this so much. And, I can speak personally over the years, the different types of cash infusions like you, I had, I've built my credit over the years. My credit now to when I first started my business is like, we're talking a couple $100s to like in the couple 5 figures on my credit. I actually just this past week, my business, my Chase Inc. card for my corporation upped my credit limit by like another 10 grand. I didn't even apply for it. So that started, I've had that card for almost 2 years now, and it's increased the limit 20 grand. And I didn't even have to do anything. So I literally don't even know why. I have no idea like what that's about. But I've also been running my business for 7 years and have been gradually, building things. The revenue has increased or whatever. But back in the day, like my mom has helped me out on numerous occasions. I took out a business line of credit a couple years ago. And, there are still debts that I'm still paying down some of those debts. And I love having these conversations because early on in my entrepreneurship journey, just like you're saying, I was just assuming when people don't talk about this, I was just assuming that everyone was better at business than me. I was like, oh, this person must be so much better. Meanwhile, they have a trust fund. Or, oh my God, look at what she's able to do. How is she paying for ads? I don't even know how she makes money. Meanwhile, like her grandma had passed away and left her a shitload of money. So as these things came out, I was like, oh, and I could be easier on myself. So I feel like there's, you know me, I'm always going to get into like the mental and emotional aspect of it as well. But I love that like you're breaking it down and giving us numbers and things like that as well. So in your experience and like what you teach and what you train people, where do you see people putting any infusion that they do have that is not giving them a return? Like where are people wasting their money?
Oh my goodness. So this is also like a huge part of what we teach in the incubator, because I see so many, women entrepreneurs, especially when they're first kind of joining, our platform, they think that, they should be investing funds more so like in infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it might be like if they're starting like a cosmetics line or a t-shirt line, like they just buy a ton of inventory, right? Mm-hmm. And that is not how you grow and scale a business. When you receive capital, it needs to be put into customer acquisition. And really to master customer acquisition, you need to, in this day and age, master paid advertising. And so it's like one, even teaching things like, sales funnels, Facebook and Instagram ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, like all of those things, are often not conversations that are being had, at least in the circles of women that I'm attracting. And so a lot of this information is very new. They just think that if they go on Facebook and post to their page, or they go on Instagram and post to their page, that all of a sudden, like this flock of audience is going to, just come to them, and that they're automatically going to buy their stuff. Like there's a psychology to sales, there's a process to sales. And so, not only is it like, okay, let's help you get the funding, let's teach you how to get the funding, but it's like, okay, after we get that, here's what you have to do to it. Here's the systems that you have to put in place. Here's how you build, your database, and you have your sales funnel in place, and, you run your ads, et cetera. And here's how you test your ads. So you don't just go and receive $1,000 and throw $1,000 on an ad that's never been tested. It's like, it's very strategic, the way that you build a business and you scale to over $100,000. And it's not something that happens overnight. So there's none of this, like in 30 days, you're going to start making 10 grand a month. That's not true. It's like, okay, can we just master making $1,000 per month? Like I found that almost 80% of the women who join, my incubator, haven't even made $1,000 per month in their businesses. And here, they're hearing from all these coaches of like, oh, like I can get you to, $100,000 in sales in like 30 days or, et cetera. And it's just like, it's just not true, So I feel like I'm also cleaning up the mess of a lot of unqualified, dishonest business coaches out there, and then I have all these women who are coming to me who have spent a lot of personal money, took out from their 401ks, maxed out their personal credit cards, drained their personal savings, because they were listening to horrible advice and paying coaches thousands of dollars that got them minimal results. And so it's been so interesting navigating, everything that's happening in the coaching world, and just, people not receiving proper advice, all the way to the funding world and opportunities, not being, necessarily accessible to a lot of these women, and then having to help them like rebuild credit, kind of restructure, how they're funneling their sales into their bank accounts, making sure they even have business bank accounts and LLCs. Mm-hmm, it's just so many different moving parts and different pieces. So yeah, a lot of work to be done.
Let me tell you, I had set up an LLC back in like 2012, but like didn't really use it. I operated as a sole proprietor until 2016 when I finally set up my S Corp. And even that, like the tax structure alone makes such a difference. But I didn't know, like there's literally so many things that we don't know. We waste so much money, and a lot of coaches, a lot of that messaging, regardless of the industry, a lot of that messaging is you got to invest in yourself first. And like, listen, and I've been there, and I do believe that in a certain, like there's going to be ceilings to your potential if like your mindset and your own issues around certain things aren't addressed. But what you're saying is you also need to know how to run a business. It's both.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's kind of what's really missing. So there is a lot of, definitely there's mindset work that is required to be able to, one, even handle being a CEO, because it's a lot of, work and demand and responsibility. It's not just as simple as, oh, I'm about to be living this life on the beach, making, whatever, thousands and thousands of dollars per month or $1 million a year, et cetera. And not having to really understand operationally how a business works. And so it's teaching, operations, it's, understanding sales and marketing, it's, teaching funding and cash flow. It's a lot of different pieces that I feel like, a lot of us are missing. And so that's, what I really want to make sure that, we understand.
So how did you land here? Give us your origin story.
So I've been working in digital marketing for the past 10 years. And I've primarily worked with startups and small businesses. And so I kind of got in on kind of the whole digital world very early in the game. So, I was kind of doing Facebook, marketing campaigns back in like 2008 before it was cool to even do it. Mm-hmm. And, I worked in kind of, some offices, very early in my career, but I just wasn't really into it. So I kind of went more into the entrepreneurial realm so that I could work remotely. I did some consulting. I stopped for maybe like 2 years and started a women's sexuality magazine. Then I realized that I missed actually working, in the marketing field, and that was really my first love, working with founders. And so I returned and then started to actually build my agency in 2015. And so I built the agency from 2015 to 2018, a lot of one-on-one work. And then I just kind of got this very spiritual pull that the knowledge that I had accumulated over the last 10 years was meant to serve women who were much earlier in their careers, and who really needed the support and really needed the structure and really needed the education and the funding resources and opportunities that I knew how to get. And so I resigned from, kind of my last client relationship, and I started 100K Incubator. And, from there, it was just about how do I build the most affordable, low cost, basically, platform for women entrepreneurs who are in, let's say, the first 2 years of their businesses, or who just haven't reached $100,000 in yearly sales. How do I build this platform that teaches them, one, how to get funding, two, how to leverage that funding and to really be able to increase their sales, and how to run a business properly. And so those are the three things that we really focus hard on. And it's everything from, live coaching to like a really intense core curriculum to a private community. It's all of that. And so that for me has, even though we're only about 3 months old at the time of this recording, it's been the most fulfilling work that I've ever done. And it has completely, I think, reconnected me to the passion that I used to feel so fired up about our social issues, because I kind of felt like there were always these two sides to me. It's like, I had like my social issues, social justice side, and then I have my business, right? And so I always felt like, all right, well, the business can help fund some of these other organizations, but I never saw how the business could play a role in helping correct some of these social issues. And so that's what I feel like we get to do right now, and I'm really excited about it.
I appreciate this, and I can relate. There's so many things that I always cared about, but I didn't know how to integrate them into my business. And obviously, anyone listening knows that that's been a huge focus for us in the last couple of years. I really just want to take a moment. This might be like one of like 3 episodes we do specifically geared towards entrepreneurs this year. And one of the reasons why you're invited is because you're a wild soul woman. I care about what you're doing. I've been watching what you're doing. We get pitched by people who want to like talk about entrepreneurship stuff. And I'm like, nah, you kind of have to be in the inner circle if I'm going to be willing to have that conversation with you. And you also need to be tuned into the issues like you're talking about here. And so there's a couple of things that you mentioned as you gave us your trajectory. And one of them, I really want to overemphasize. So much messaging out there sells the like overnight dream to people. Or like the 30-day or like the 90-day, 90 days I feel like is a big 3 months to whatever. And, you were in it for a decade before you landed in like what you're doing. Like, honestly, it took me 7 years to establish my business model, And that is not a sexy thing.
No, it's not. At all. It's totally not sexy. The truth of the matter is I didn't even start making 6 figures until like 2015, and I started in 2008. So it was one of those things. Well, let me be specific. I didn't start making 2015 off of my business. I didn't start making 100K off of my business, until 2015. So there were other kind of remote job contracts and like other things that I had. But yeah, for me to actually build a sustainable business, it really didn't happen for six figures, until I was like 7 years into the game. And I could have probably gotten there faster had I had the knowledge, but there was a lot of trial and error and things that I had to figure out. But even if you do get there faster, it's still a process. And I think that you have to be committed to the process. Like you have to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I might only make $1,000, per month, at first, but let me master that and let me actually pay attention to what's happening inside of my business to make that $1,000. Because I also think that there's a lack of awareness as well that I often find when I'm talking to, founders about how they're actually making their money, like what's actually working. Yes. And so it's like paying attention to, okay, like maybe we only made $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, but where did those sales actually come from? What marketing techniques did we use that were trackable where we can actually see like, okay, this is what actually drove our customer base. And I think if you pay attention to the journey that it takes to even get to $100,000 in sales, you learn so much about your business that it makes continuing to scale a lot easier versus if you're just focused on how do I do 10,000, it's pay attention to the details because the strategy is always in the details.
And when you say made 100,000, I just want to make sure we're distinguishing between gross revenue, sales, and net, because that's another thing that is just my pet peeve until the end of time. All these people talking about, I have a 6-figure business, I have a 7-figure business. But as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are investing a ton of that into paid advertising to generate that number, and that is not what they're taking home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree for that. So for me, I'm talking net for me, but I think that's absolutely true, right? And so you can make $100,000 in sales, but I would hope that your advertising costs wouldn't be anywhere near, close to that, so it is also learning like, okay, what is an appropriate kind of, amount of money to spend and what's the plan, to be able to grow, my leads, to be able to convert those leads into customers, because your advertising spend, if you're spending 70 grand to make 100 grand, that's ridiculous. Like,
right.
Yeah, like, no, like, but you're right. There are a lot of people who will be like, we made 6 figures. And it's like, yeah, but how much did you spend to actually get there?
And then do me a favor. Don't tell me you made 6 figures. Tell me you made 30 grand,
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, there will be years, where you do go hard on expenses and you reinvest in the business. So this is not like well, if you're not profiting X, Y, and Z, et cetera. Totally. I've had years that I've grossed, definitely over 6 figures. But there were some years that I made a very strategic point that I was going to reinvest in having, my platform rebranded, or, I put a lot of money into, building more, awareness or publicity or, whatever it is. So there will be years that are very, profit healthy, and then there will be years that you make a strategic decision not to go in that direction and to do something else so that it pays off maybe the following year. So
yeah. And again, as you're saying this, I'm just hearing if there's strategy, there's long-term thinking. It's not just like the month to month or like, what am I going to do this year? We actually have to think a little bit further out, even if things change. Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a quick break in the show here to let you know of a new one-on-one offering over at wildsoulmovement.com, and that is Akashic Records readings. If you don't know anything about the Akashic Record readings, having an Akashic Record reading can be extremely valuable. The soul's very essence and expression, potentials, and purposes can be revealed. Issues of a lifetime are brought to light from a spiritual perspective. Both favorable and difficult patterns that are present can be identified, and as well, corrective measures required to establish harmony can be seen. And that comes from Linda Howe, founder and director of the Center for Akashic Studies, whose organization I was recently certified through. For the last decade, I've done all kinds of healing, growth, therapeutic, and transformational work. I've been trained, certified, and attuned in healing modalities, including Reiki, energy mastery crystals. Many of you know I've also created my own embodiment-based modality, Wild Soul Movement. And I share all of that to say I'm a lifelong student, believer, and deep practitioner in healing practices to optimize and harmonize the human experience. So this past fall in 2018, despite all the tools and modalities at my disposal, I had some really big questions I was having difficulty accessing the answers to on my own. And after hearing about a dear friend's experience with the Akashic Records, I booked a reading. And it was one of the most healing and clarifying experiences of my life. The immense amount of love and blessings I felt, in addition to the aligned answers I received during my reading, left me feeling like I'd stumbled onto something unparalleled and extra special. And it's something that I continue to use as a tool in my own life. But several months later, during another reading with my practitioner, Helen, I had it on my list of questions to ask if reading the Akashic Records was something that I should incorporate into my own private work with clients. And following synchronicities and trusting in the divine unfoldment of things is a big part of how I live my life. So it was pretty cool that before I could even ask about whether I should learn how to read the records myself, it came up during my reading that it would be highly beneficial to deepen my own practice and offer this as part of my work with clients. So if you want to check that out, if you want to learn more, see what's available, I do 25-minute and 45-minute readings. I open up about 20 time slots per month, and you can get all the details over at wildsoulmovement.com/Akashic. That's AKASHIC. And as with all things that I offer out there to you, for some people it'll really resonate, and for some people they'll be like, what the hell is this? So if you're what the hell is this person, just keep on scrolling by. And if you're intrigued, go ahead over to wildsoulmovement.com/Akashic. And I look forward to possibly connecting with you in that way. Back to the show. I also want to come back to something you said about working remotely, because this is I want to hear about your experience with it. I'll share a little bit of my experience as well, because this is really sold as like an ideal. And it's not necessarily as glamorous as a lot of people make it out to be. It can be. So I'd love to hear both sides of the coin. What is like glamorous and amazing about it for you, and what really hasn't been?
Oh, wow. So I am someone that likes to work in silence. So I think some people really enjoy working where there's people around and cafes and like everyone's bustling and doing stuff. I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, I don't want to hear any music. I want it to be like a pin drop. I want to be able to shut the door, zone out, and get what I need to get done. That's how I feel. And so I often find that being at home affords me that opportunity. And it also gives me access to my refrigerator with all of my food and my teas and stuff like that. So it works for me more so from a self-care and focus perspective. But, I know other people who it's like, I can't, stay home, like I can't work at home and, I need to go into an office, et cetera. So yeah, I think it just depends on kind of your working style.
Yeah. And then anything about transitioning from working in offices or working in a corporate environment to even just managing your own time and doing your own thing? Was there anything in that transition that was challenging for you, or not really?
So my transition, I think, was a little bit different. So because, like I said, I started my career kind of working in New York City, working in offices, mostly for startups and agencies, right? And then basically from there, I got burnt out and I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave. I moved to Brazil. I started the Women's Sexuality magazine. And I really took some time off. So my first time leaving the office, I had that transition of just taking the time. So I wasn't even really working. And then what I will say is that I was living in the Dominican Republic, maybe about a year or so after. And I was attempting to kind of get back into the marketing field. And I actually found that I could not work being out there because it was too lax. And so I was like, this whole beach lifestyle and, travel situation, it works for some people. I can't do it. Like for me, it's like there's vacation and there's beach and then there's work. And so I have to be in a certain environment and often a certain city, to be able to really focus the way that I need to on growing my company. And so I live in Miami, which for me is kind of like the best of both worlds. So we have like, the beach and, that's all wonderful and I can go out, but like, I don't take my laptop with me to the beach.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, at least for me. So that's how I kind of keep it separate.
Yeah. I feel you. There's that. oh, work from wherever, or work from anywhere, or, people taking pictures like my office today. And I'm like, if I'm in that beautiful environment, I want to be hanging out, chilling, enjoying it,
Yeah.
not like writing. But again, for some people, that is conducive for them. But I'm totally with you. A little bit of buzz, a little bit of city energy. Even when I first moved from New York to California and I was in Laguna Beach, which is a much sleepier town, it was very hard that first year in Southern California. It was very hard for me to get anything done.
Mm.
It was super strange. So I appreciate you sharing this because I want people listening to really consider always, who they are and how they're built, and also be mindful that there is always some level of research and development or experimentation where we need to look at not just the complexity of like who you are and how you engage with your business and what you do best and how you work, and then maybe what you need to prioritize hiring out, but also what kind of environment. Like, I'm with you on the self-care thing. Being able to have access to my own food and not have to eat out, like that helps me a lot be able to just function better across the board. And like you said, some people don't have that. Like, we're relatively young single people for the most part, single meaning childless.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there are some other factors for people who have, other obligations and other things going on.
Absolutely.
Are you finding most of the people that come into your incubator, is it a range, or is it like similar to you, or?
It's a range, honestly. So I will say that our age demographic is primarily women ages 25 to 45,
Mm-hmm.
And it is primarily women of color. But I think that's just because I've been very deliberate about targeting my advertisements to those women, because I just feel like they're so underserved. And we have women of other races inside the incubator as well, and, everyone is welcome, but it is interesting, even just in terms of demographics. I'd actually say at least over half actually do have children,
Cool.
And so there are actually, different responsibilities that they have to juggle. And I think that's also one of the reasons that I've become so passionate about getting their businesses funding that's separate from their personal finances, because they have other things that they have to take care of.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I want is for your family to have a lesser lifestyle because you're trying to, put all of your money, into the business. It's like, no, like there has to be separation. Yes, there will be sacrifice, but it's like, no, like standard of living needs to stay the same. And there needs to be additional capital that is put inside the business, and that you have the knowledge to be able to scale. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious if you're either thoughts, opinions, or even strategy towards when people want to go full-time in their business, and maybe they've been carrying a day job or something, or a bridge job to get them there. Because again, this is something that kind of bugs me about some of this like guru advice, which is like, leap and the net will appear. And that's an easy piece of advice for people who might have access to safety nets to give. That is really irresponsible to be giving to people who might not.
Yes. And so part of what we teach when it comes to funding, because oftentimes, so I offer a free class that, a lot of women watch about business funding. And I get a lot of kind of private DMs on Instagram where women are talking about, I want to get business funding because I want to be able to quit my job and be able to, work on my business full time. That is not what you use funding for. That is not what it's there for. What it's there for is to help you scale and acquire customers. And so literally the funding, we usually say about 70% of it needs to be invested in customer acquisition, in your sales process and your ads. And so we teach that you do not, like your personal expenses, whether it's your home or your personal bills, et cetera, that's separate, from, at least funding, purposes, because we're not going to borrow money to then pump into your personal stuff. There's no return on that. So it definitely creates a problem. I'm like, work your job as long as you can work your job. And even if you have to transition to a better job that gives you more space to work on your business, you can get a remote job, you can find other sources, of income. But I think taking that pressure off your very young business, it's like asking a 2-year-old to support the household. It's like, no, allow the child to grow up, before you actually put your entire weight on the kid. So for me personally, like that's what we teach. Like I'm not a big fan of this whole kind of leap because, you hate your job. You hate your job, get a better job. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And listen, I'm the person who's done that. I'm the person who's gotten some kind of funding and used it also to live, right? And not just invested it back into things that would give a return, and who's quit a job too soon and put pressure on a 2-year-old. Like, I've done that. And I think that's part of the reason why it took me 7 years to land in my business model. And lots of, varieties of, like I said, like whether it's credit card, business line of credit, being very fortunate to have a mom who could like give me a bridge loan, pay my mom back without interest, which is lovely. And I know not everyone has access to those things. That's why I ask these questions. Okay. So what else? What's fun for you right now outside of your work? Because for me personally, one of the things that is one of the greatest blessings about entrepreneurship is to be able to create a life and a lifestyle that really suits me. So, like, how are you living?
Yeah. So, one, living in Miami is such a blessing because the water is right there. So I'm someone that I feed off of ocean energy and water energy. And so being able to look at the water every day is fantastic. Right now I'm in a high rise that I actually have like a water view. So it's awesome. But, in addition to that, it's a city with a lot happening. And so one of my favorite things to do that I know that we kind of share a passion for is salsa dancing. And so I love dancing salsa. It's one of the few things that I would say in my life that I have no interest in being a professional at. And so it is literally just purely for fun. And so I enjoy doing that so much. I also have a really beautiful group of girlfriends, here in Miami. And I've always had really great girlfriends, but they always usually lived in all these different cities. Yeah. But now I have this like cohort of women here in my city that we can get together for dinners and, really just, celebrate each other. And so they're also a big part of my fun as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm in the previous place that you mentioned where I do have some great friends in LA, but there's not like a cohort. They're spread out. They're from different places, and then some of my closest people are literally all over the place. So that's something that I have like a secret desire to like find. Well, I guess not secret. Find the place where I can like have a group, a steady, solid, consistent group of people. Tell me about the sexuality magazine. I just want to know about this.
Yeah. So basically when I was kind of working for these different startups and agencies in New York, I was also kind of moonlighting as a sex blogger, right? Because when I was in college, I studied gender and sexuality, as well as Africana studies, right? And so a lot of my gender and sexuality studies, kind of had me having conversations about, just women just even being comfortable about talking about sex and how we express our sexuality and our sensuality and all of these things. And so I found myself just kind of writing and posting online. And I was one of the kind of few Black female sex bloggers back in the day who would write without a pseudonym. And so a lot of people knew who I was. We would have conversations on Twitter because that was like the amazing platform at the time. And it was just really great and really awesome. And so after a while, just kind of being a businesswoman, I was like, this freelance life is not for me. Like, getting paid for these articles is not going to work. So let me start a business. And so I started the magazine. And really what I wanted to do was pair
it was print,
all of these
or it was online or both?
It was online. But it was done in like a PDF. So there was a lot of photography, really beautiful images, really beautiful design that was paired with, these really powerful stories, coming from, people of all different backgrounds, not just women either. We had, members of the trans community writing for us. We had some men writing for us as well. And so it was a really powerful publication. We put out 10 issues over the span of about 2 years. And then I just got to the point, maybe just because it was very kind of early and I didn't have, the focus to want to try and figure it out, because like when you're marketing a business that is kind of sexuality related, it's hard. Yeah. So like I don't have access to the same things like being able to run Instagram ads or Facebook ads. A lot of my content would be flagged. And so it was just really, really hard. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I love this enough. I'm passionate about the mission, but I don't know if I love the business enough to have to figure this out, because it was like either you got to enter and be in the pornography world, and play in the adult industry, or you got to do all of these backflips and hurdles just to be able to talk on mainstream platforms. And it was just too much. So the magazine is called Corset, though, for anybody who wants to see it. Like, it's Corset Magazine.
I was going to ask if it still lives anywhere.
Yeah, so it's still online. You can go and you can purchase issues and all that stuff. It's, literally like super easy to do. But yeah, it still lives on and I still get emails and my readers still reach out to me.
Oh, I love that.
And they're like, "Oh, are you going to put more issues out?" And I think one day I will, but that's going to have to be something that I personally fund probably. And it's going to have to come at a time where I have the mental space to be able to figure out how to scale the business model, because right now it's I don't have the mental space because I'm so focused on the incubator. But two, I guess you could say like these mainstream platforms haven't loosened enough for me to be able to do the marketing that I need to do. And I'm not really interested in pushing the magazine in the porn world. So yeah.
And in fact, I think it's tightening up. Actually, a dear friend of mine, Rachel Maddox, she was posting about this, and I've seen Evian Whitney talking about it as well, that Instagram especially, I think, is cracking down on any kind of sex work or sex content, which is, it's so unfortunate because there's so much healthy, healing-oriented, really valuable content that is ridiculous to me. Making decisions. So you've done several different things. Making decisions to walk away from stuff, which in some case involves cutting losses. Can you talk about what, I mean, and again, Arielle's experience for anyone listening might be different from yours, but I'd love to hear how people, because those are hard decisions. And you kind of started to allude to it with the magazine, but, and it sounds like you're a very practical, business-oriented thinker when it comes to these things, just going, is it bringing in the money or not? Like, is there an ROI or not? But also in terms of like, that's personal. That's your creativity. That a lot of labor has gone into that. What have those choices been like for you when you've decided to walk away from things?
Yeah, so I've had probably about 3 departures in my career that were pretty significant. So, the first departure I would say was kind of leaving the traditional office agency world to go and move to Brazil and try to create a magazine, right? And to kind of push forward the career that I was building as like a sexuality writer, right? And then so I create the magazine and it's awesome and we do it for 2 years and it's fantastic. But I realized again that, the mental space that was required and the tenacity that was required to scale that business just wasn't working for me. And so I made a decision to go back to really what was my first love, honestly, which was going back into the marketing and business development field and, building, helping other women founders build their businesses. So that was the second departure. So kind of a mix of, practical as well as, just wanting to return to the first passion. And then, I'd say kind of the third departure more so happened as I'm kind of doing this work of, working with women founders, primarily doing higher level consulting, one-on-one work, and actually making, pretty solid money. So it wasn't a financial decision. It was just a spiritual decision where I was feeling like I'm being underutilized. Like I'm not serving on the capacity that I can serve on and reaching the amount of women that I can reach because I'm dedicating all of my energy to this one founder. And I just was like, there are too many women who are struggling, and who really need, assistance versus me tying up all my time with this entrepreneur who's already making, 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, and we're just working on scaling to 7 figures. It's like the woman who hasn't even earned $1,000 in her business needs me, and so I just got, I think spiritually reorganized in terms of how I wanted to work. And I decided that I want to serve that woman. I want to be with that woman. I want to support that woman. So that's where I'm at now.
I love that. What made you go to Brazil?
It was a spiritual calling. It was totally a spiritual calling. There was no reason for it. I didn't speak Portuguese. I had never been. It was just one of those things that kept coming up for me for about 2 years. And I was like, okay, well, I'm supposed to go to Bahia. And so Bahia is kind of like the more central part on the coast in Brazil. And I was like, I'm supposed to be there. I don't know why I'm supposed to be there. But it ended up, when I went, it really influenced my development as a woman, both in terms of sensuality, but also in terms of spirituality, because it was the first time that I really made an extreme leap, from kind of my practical 9-to-5, traditional life, into actually just, feeling like there's something here that I need to explore, and then finding out that there are a lot of experiences and a lot of people that I needed to meet to be able to develop into the woman that I am today.
You know, you're reminding me of, this was a couple years back. I had Rashida Kanbe on the podcast, and she talked about going, I think it was with either with her college or with her church. I feel like it was with her church, on a trip to Brazil, and just having this experience, like you were saying, like as a woman, as a sexual being, as a sensual being worshipped. Like literally a man like stopped to like worship her. And as a woman in a larger body coming from the United States, that was just it was very confusing at first. And but then she was like, yes, like this is how it should be. And then how'd you end up in the Dominican Republic? Was that after Brazil, right after Brazil, or you went anywhere else?
Well, I went back to New York very briefly. And then I was in New York and I was like, I can't stay here. I don't know why I came back here. And so I was like, okay. And then I got connected with someone who would end up being one of my business partners on a course. And we were like, okay, like we want to move, and we were both like at the Dominican Republic. So we decided to move together, and we became roommates, and we got this really sweet apartment overlooking the water, and just went down there and kind of built out a course. And yeah, and I think I was like freelancing still in terms of writing at the time as well. So that was like, the Dominican Republic was great. It was just, maybe it was just the part I was living in Cabarete, honestly. And it just felt too much like a lazy beach town, which is beautiful for vacation. But when it comes to building a business, I didn't feel focused. I felt way too lax. And I realized that I needed a more structured city, a more structured environment. I also needed consistent, strong internet that's not influenced by rainstorms. There's a lot of things that I realized. I was like, I got to put myself in a more structured environment. And funny enough, my father had always said to me, he's like, I don't know why you keep moving out of the country. You should just move to Miami. It's like a different country inside the United States, right? And so I was like, oh, whatever. Like, that's ridiculous. And I ended up actually going to Miami very briefly as part of a tour stop for the sexuality magazine that I created because I did an event there. And I got here, and it was my first time being here as an adult. And I was like, whoa, like what kind of vortex magical place is this? And I just realized, I was like, no, I'm supposed to live here. And then it took me about a year to make the move. But once I made the move, I've pretty much been here ever since.
So it's so funny. Did I message you about this? I want to say this was like a month ago. And I think, I know like you've been in my community for many years now. So you know how much I've bounced around and moved. Like about a month ago, I was like, do I need to move to Miami? And part of it is like my own desire. I'm really like reclaiming like my own Latina roots, like even a week from today, I'm heading to Puerto Rico to go spend a week with my family. And then I meant to message you anyway, because I'm making a pit stop in Miami to just see. Like, I'm like, I have to go put my body there. I have to go feel it. I was like, man, another cross-country move. Like, people have asked me, like, would you ever move back to the East Coast? And I'm like, maybe like Miami, but not like, not New York either. I'm the same. I love New York. I love going to visit. I love getting like a 3 or 4 day infusion of New York. And then I'm like, and I gotta go.
Yeah, it's time to go. Literally, I'm the same. And it's actually strengthened my love for New York, not living there.
Yes,
because
yes.
I was really fed up.
Yes.
But every time I go back, I love it, especially if it's during the summer, which is usually the only time I like to go back. But like being in Brooklyn in the summer, being in Harlem in the summer, even just being in the city, like it's fantastic. And I just have so much, like such a deeper appreciation for all of the quirks and just things that are part of New York. But I literally have no desire to ever live there permanently ever again.
My metaphor in New York is it's like that lover that's like the best lover you ever had, but you just know you can't date them.
Yeah, pretty
like,
much.
There's no long-term potential, but like every couple years you reunite and you're like, man, that is good stuff. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to include in the conversation as we wrap up here?
No, I feel like we had a great conversation, honestly, because we touched on everything from the magazine to the Incubator to just Brazil and the journey. So I feel pretty complete.
Cool. And I want to make sure the Incubator, I know like recently, is it something that people can always join? Is it something they can only join during certain windows? How do people get involved with that if they're interested?
Yeah, so you can actually go to 100kincubator.com if you want to like actually take the free class and learn more about it. And so the free class is open, at all times. And then, we usually provide like about a 5-day window for you to make your decision on whether you want to join. And so I, again, like really designed the incubator to be something that was very low cost, because I also have become very passionate about giving, women entrepreneurs the opportunity to get quality business, advice from someone who's actually qualified to mentor, and to get the funding resources. You're laughing, but it's true. Like,
no, I'm laughing because there's hella people out there who aren't qualified, giving all kinds of advice that is literally just like flushing people's money down the toilet.
Like, no, like, I mean, on multiple levels, it's like, one, yes, I've worked with startups for 10 years, especially in the marketing and development space. But I also went to Harvard, and so I have a master's in management. I have all sorts of certifications in business, like, from all sorts of, like, I've done my homework. Like, I've trained hard. And so the advice that I give, it's vetted, and anyone that I bring on to teach as well inside of the incubator or partners are vetted. Like, I play like no games in that space. And so, but even with all of that and all the value that's packed into it, because a lot of my members are like, we cannot believe that you charge so little for us to be part of this platform. But this venture is not about the money. Like, it's just not. And for me, it's about how can I impact the lives of 10,000 women business owners and help them get funding over the next 10 years. And for me to do that and to work with the demographic that I want to work with, which is early stage women entrepreneurs who don't have the money to be investing really thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in coaching unless they pull it from their personal money. Like, I'm not interested. Like, I don't need your money. Like, I need you to be focused on scaling your business. So take that $5,000 that you were going to pay, a business coach, and invest that in advertising, invest that in, scaling in terms of customer acquisition. I just personally don't feel the need to have to lean into early stage women, founders to pay me thousands of dollars to coach them. Like, and it's not a knock to anybody who that is their business model, that's fine. But at this point in my life, I've already done that. I've been there. I've been a high paid consultant and done a lot of one-on-one work. That's not what this is about. This is about sharing information. It's about sharing education. It's about connecting to funding resources. And really, like hopefully changing the lives of 10,000 women business owners in 10 years.
I love it so much. Okay. So 100, the number, kincubator.com if you want to check all of that out. It's Arielle Loren on Instagram, and, we'll put links to everything in the show notes so people will be able to find you. I love Instagram. That's where I love following people. I love to see the stuff you post. I continue to learn, and it also shows me, listen, I'm not an early stage entrepreneur, but there's still gaps sometimes where I see something you post and I'm like, oh, damn, like I should pay more attention to that.
I love it.
Still now. So, we're always all growing and learning. So Arielle, thank you so much. I'll ping you separately in case you're around when I pass through Miami. I'd love to see you. And that's that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your energy, your passion, your expertise. This was super fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This conversation has been amazing. And I just want to send some appreciation to you because I love the direction that you've shifted in with the podcast and just the level of conversation that you have just even elevated like your guests in the show too. So I'm just super grateful for you to just even be podcasting and doing what you do. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Love fest. All right, y'all. Share this up. Share it with your friends. Use it as a conversation piece. Check out the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
But they have this fantasy of walking in and telling their boss to shove it and that they're going to go move to the beach and live this glamorous life and, easy life listening to, Jimmy Buffett. But there is so much work behind all these moves, even the ones that, seem really romantic and wonderful, like the restaurateurs in Anguilla. So I do want to like to highlight that.